Hi, welcome to Ephesoft University. Today we'll be looking at the Ephesoft platform. I'll first introduce myself. I'm Chris McWilliams, a sales engineer here at Ephesoft. I will be walking you through a demonstration today of the Ephesoft platform, and today we'll look at Ephesoft in front-end scanning of maybe in a mailroom environment of a particular organization. So let's begin by looking at Ephesoft and the solution and what that entails. So in Ephesoft, we've set up this platform to be able to ingest a number of different formats. Maybe it's a paper document or an email or a fax. These are all different ways a document could enter the organization. So what we do in Ephesoft is we look at your process, we understand it, and we identify the different document types or categories that might fit into your business process. So we might look at your process and understand there's a medical records component, or maybe a UB or HICFA, which are fixed form medical records. Maybe it's an invoice, a semi-structured document. Header and footer seem to be the same, but middle areas change. Or maybe even something as abstract as a letter, which is a free form or an unstructured document, again, that might not have too many clues at first glance of what type of document it is. But we can solve for different types of documents like this. So once we've identified these categories, the next thing, and we've set up our Ephesoft server, we'll begin to throw new documents at it. Put it into production. This simulates documents coming in. Maybe they're paper documents. Ephesoft will look at them and classify them using context-based classification. We're not looking at images or zones. We're using a full text, understanding from the document end to end of what exactly is on that document, and comparing that to a sample set of learned documents. And by making that comparison, we can understand exactly what document type it is. And again, we're doing this separation of different document types with no separator sheets at all content based. So once the documents have been sorted, just like you saw here, the next phase would be to extract data, pulling data off these documents. We call it extraction, and we'll look at that in the demonstration as well. So maybe in a medical records, we'll want to extract a particular information, maybe a social security number, or on a UB, maybe a date field or a claim number. It's all configurable in the Ephesoft platform. So once we've done that, identified the documents and extracted the information that's needed off of them, we release them to the next component. Maybe that's a repository or a line of business application. The nice thing about Ephesoft is that we can dual release. Being on the front end, we can maybe release some specific metadata to a repository, or the images, or the same data or different data even to a line of business application. So let's look at the capture workflow. This is what we'll be looking at today in our demonstration. We'll look at the ingestion piece, or how documents can enter. Then we'll look at our classification or review. And then in this third bubble, we'll look at the index validation and how we would look at the different metadata fields and correct them if there is correction needed. And then finally we'll release to the next system or the final resting place. So in ingestion, we can, of course, use scan, maybe a file upload, a fax, or maybe even intake a email attachment. That would be the first ingestion, and once that batch is assembled, we would run it to the Ephesoft server, run some analysis on it, and that would come up. If there was if the document met a certain threshold and there was no needed no need to review any of these classifications, or it was 100% confident that every single document is truly what it is, then it of course skip the classification review and move to the next workflow step. But in the demonstration, we'll look at the classification. So again, correct any documents with low confidence scores. That's what we'll be doing here. Again, with index validation, we'll be doing something similar, just not at the document level, but maybe at the field level. We'll look at the different metadata that's being extracted off these documents and correct when necessary. And we'll look at a variety of different ways of how we use extraction and pull back data off of these documents using Ephesoft. And then again, the final is the release, our export component, releasing to a repository, line of business application, or maybe just file folders with CSV output or some kind of XML. So very good. So now let's look at the Ephesoft platform. This is Ephesoft here. We're looking at our web scanner. So we'll first look at web scanner. It's a very easy tab. A user might sit down in the mailroom, come to this screen, connect their different scanner, maybe change some scanners. We have different scanning profiles we can use. Maybe these are low quality images or high quality images. We can interface with that here. But we've made it very easy on the operator. It's very simple. We try to keep it simple. What the operator would first do is select the batch class that they would be scanning to. In this case, it's the mailroom automation batch class. And we just simply start the scanner. So I have a scanner sitting next to me, and it's going ahead and it's scanning right now a couple documents. So we'll look at those in a second here. Looks like they're coming over now. So here's an invoice. I can review, look through that document. Looks like it's scanned well. I can refresh here again, and I can thumb through these, and it looks like this document or this page of the batch was actually a medical report, but it was scanned upside down. So we'll look at that in the next step, our review step, of how we might fix this. Ephesoft's very intelligent, and we'll look at all the words on the document and understand if these words are upside down. So in this case, it would rotate this document 180 degrees and be correct. And of course, the user could rotate it here. But I want you to understand that Ephesoft can do this automatically for you. So once that's done, the operator would simply stop the scanner and stop scanning. I would acknowledge that this is a finished batch. I could maybe, if I wanted to rescan this particular page, I could do so. I could delete it. I could also even tie, if we configure it, to have batch level fields, which is what we call them. And this is information about the entire batch. This can be populated by maybe a little text box or a drop-down menu that some operator could come in and input data about the entire batch. So very good. So our batch is good. We can just finish this, and I really am finished with scanning. So I'll click OK, and the batch has been uploaded for process. Again, this is all in a web browser. I'm just in Mozilla Firefox, interfacing with a Fujitsu Twain scanning device, just all with the Twain driver. So no thick client deployment, all very easy to configure and manage from an IT perspective. So that batch has been released, and we'll now look at the review component. So this is the review tab. This is what a typical operator again would see. On the left hand side is we can see our documents and our different document types that we've solved for. Again, in this batch there was no separator sheets or barcodes or of any kind. We're all doing this with content analysis, so it understood that this is a paper bill and separated it accordingly from a W-9. So you might ask yourself, why did this stop on the red dot? Well, it looks like this document is a little fuzzy. Maybe it didn't have great clarity or didn't get a great hit on our learned sample set of images that we're comparing to. So basically Ephesoft is saying, hey user, I'm not completely confident about this document. I need some human eyeballs to identify it. So that's what it's doing here. And it's also saying, user, my best guess is that it's a W9. Am I right? And of course you are right, Ephesoft, and you have identified this as a W9. So I would just simply use a hotkey or shortcuts. Here are a bunch of different shortcuts we have. Made it very easy for the operator to navigate anywhere on the screen with just a hit of the keyboard. Again, you getting the mouse out of the equation. We can also do, if you have a large set of documents, I can kind of use a Google search to look for different document types. So I can just begin typing insurance, or maybe I type health insurance claim form, and I can just hit enter and select the right document. That of course is the wrong document, so I would go back, type in P-bill, or no, this is a W9, and select it. So that's just another ability or another way to sort through your documents. This is particularly useful in situations where there's lots of different document types. So very good. So I would hit Control S. The batch is done. I can release it to the next phase. So I simply hit OK and move over to the next document. So we'll look here. Now we're actually at the next process of our batch. Now instead of reviewing it, we're actually validating the index fields that were pulled off. So if I look through here, again I can see that my paper bill was identified correctly, and all that information is carried over from the last screen. So now we're pulling back information. So here we're doing a claim number, a social security number, and a date of injury. All this data has been extracted perfectly, and there's no need for a user to come to this document. It's surpassed all sufficient confidence scores, and we've tied it with a green dot. So that's what's going on here. A user would not have to stop here, only on the red dots. So let's go look at this document 3 and why we have a red dot. So we have a red dot because the date of birth was not found. Maybe it's not on this document. I can look through this medical. This is actually that medical reports that was auto-rotated back to the right side up, and it looks like it looks good. So let's look at why this batch errored out, or this document was red. It looks like the date of birth was not found on this document. I can't find it anywhere on this particular document. So there's a number of ways we could solve for it. If this date of birth was found on the document, maybe there's another field here, date of birth, and had a field in it, we could simply just click on that value and it would map it to here. This is kind of a living document, a living image, if you will. I can click on any word and it will instantly map to these documents. I can even grab whole texts or whole sections of the document and put it in. So that's very useful in the way of pulling out lots of data. Again, no, you wouldn't have to necessarily key in all this information. So very useful. But again, a date of birth wasn't found on this document. So how would we solve for something like that? Typically, organizations would have some kind of database on the back end with a list of their patients, and maybe have their date of birth. So I could simply hit start typing Smith in our fuzzy search, and I could click search, and I could see that Ephesoft returned 2 results, a Rob Smith and a Joe Smith. So I know I'm looking for Joe Smith. Here's his birth date, and I can simply click select, and it maps the birth date to the appropriate field. Now, of course, this could be automated even, so the user wouldn't even have to go and type it in. Maybe we create a rule to make a search off of the name. So when you extract the name, pull back data from the database and map it to these fields accordingly. So that's just one little demonstration of how we can utilize this feature. So again, once that's done, Ephesoft will go out and it run some more server time and then release the batch. So now let's look at release. On our release portion of this demonstration, we've just released to a basic file structure and tied our different data to with a particular naming convention. You can also see that we released with this batch XML, which has all the data and metadata mapped accordingly for our different bills, and we've even mapped the document type to the file structure. So I can go through, here's my paper bill, some UB documents, some W-9s, all the information is accordingly, and maybe we map a claim number here, or a birth date, or even the patient name. So all the ability that you would need to capture and pass on your information to the next system is here in Ephesoft, out of the box, ready to go. That concludes our presentation today, and I hope you found this educational. If you need anything, you can always reach out to info@ephesoft.com, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for your time. Bye.